President Julius Maada Bio has won re-election in Sierra Leone's 10th presidential vote, the Election Commission confirmed, but his main challenger was quick to reject the results. Chief Electoral Commissioner Mohamed Kenewi Kone said yesterday that Bio, who is 59 years old, was re-elected with 56.17% of Saturday's vote. His top rival, Samura Kamara of the All People's Congress, APC, came second with 41.16%. However, during a Monday evening press conference, European Union observers said a lack of transparency and communication by the Electoral Authority had led to mistrust in the electoral process. About 3.4 million people were registered to vote in Saturday's election. Joining us now on the morning show to discuss the re-election of President Bio and the expectations of Sierra Leoneans and Africa in general is Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Nigerian diplomat, and Lindsay Barrett, a political analyst. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Keshi, for joining us. Well, I already gave the introduction.
Good morning, Ruben.
Morning, sir. So I already gave the background to the election in Sierra Leone on Saturday and the declaration yesterday of President Julius Maada Bio as a winner of that election. Your take on the general issues arising from that election and the impression of the various observers from the Commonwealth to the ECOWAS and the African Union.
Thank you, Ruben. Let me say that when it comes to Sierra Leone, I'm an interested party. I spent about 6 years in that country. I was one of the members of the international group that fashioned out the peace agreement that ended the 10 years civil war in Sierra Leone. And I happen to know both candidates in the election. The president, whom I know very well, and I can say a lot about because of our close connection, especially leading to his rise to power as a military head of state. And so this morning, I was talking to some of my friends, old friends in Sierra Leone, and they presented a mixed picture. I spoke to both sides, and I think that we have a dicey situation in Sierra Leone. But one of those things that struck me was that 2 out of 3 people said to me, we don't become like Ona. If you know what that means. You know, in other words, that they now have the Nigerian situation as well. And they are really very concerned that, you know, peace and stability that they have enjoyed since the end of the war itself will not break down as a result of this election. Well, look, I think we need to find the way in this part of the world to do a lot of things when it comes to managing the electoral process. People go out to vote, and they vote peacefully, happily, and they look forward to a credible result. Somewhere along the line, electoral officials and the Electoral Commission begin to misbehave. And this is the problem. You know, the only place where I can say, look, I remember also, you know, participating in the Namibian election, and I went to see the leader of opposition, you know, after the counting. I said, look, now SWAPO has won. So where do we go from here? He said to me, look, sir, there's no problem. I'm the leader of opposition. The election here was peaceful, credible, and there's no way, nothing for us to protest because the process was properly managed by the United Nations transition, you know, team. Everybody who was supposed to vote in Namibia voted. The counting was excellent. But you now find a situation where people go out to vote, and between the counting process, electoral officers officials begin to misbehave and begin to do all sorts of funny things. There are a lot of stories of what happened in Sierra Leone from what I'm hearing. And this is a problem. This is a situation just like we have our own, like we have our own here. And somebody said to me this morning, he said, look, this is the situation. These guys have all the officials are working for the government. The police is working for the government. The military is working for the government. The electoral officials are working for government. So what do you expect? And now the judiciary, if you go to court, they begin to play games as well. I'm actually quoting them directly so that nobody says I'm adding my own, sugar to the whole situation. It's just unfortunate that managing election, particularly the counting process, has become challenging for us in this part of the world.
All right, let me bring you into the conversation, Mr. Barrett. Ambassador Joe Keshi has given us an overview in terms of his perspective of how the election's gone, especially based on reports from observers and reports on ground as to how the electoral process was marred with irregularities. Now, yesterday, there was an formal announcement by the Electoral Commissioner that President Bio had been re-elected, and in the evening, he was sworn in for his second term. A statement had been made about, the main opposition party, Dr. Kamara of the APC, to embrace or emulate the Nigerian example of Mr. Peter Obi and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who sought redress in court. Ambassador Keshi has already talked about the corruptions, perhaps in the judicial system, but at what point do you seek redress when a decision had been made, they've been sworn in? Is there any hope for justice, if at all, Dr. Kamara has a case in Sierra Leone?
Well, thank you for involving me at this stage. But what I'd really like to say about Sierra Leone is that whatever the issue, we should remember the sacrifices made by the sub-region to return democracy to the Sierra Leone agenda. And we should try to avoid anything that may lead to a return to the days that we saw of the Sierra Leone Civil War. I believe that what has happened in Sierra Leone is quite revealing. One, the party that has won or that has been announced as the winner is one of the oldest parties in Africa. It was the party that brought independence to Sierra Leone, the Sierra Leone People's Party. And the president who in 2018 had to go for a runoff has come back in a first ballot victory. And so we hope that whatever the quarrels that may arise in the society will not break the issue of recovery. That's what this election was supposed to be about, the recovering of a wounded nation. And I believe that issues will be settled. But of course, they will now have to be settled in court because the opposition has refused to consider the process as free and fair. But what we saw in the run-up to the elections was that President Bio does have genuine credibility among the younger people. And so we hope that this will be overcome.
Thank you so much for your time and for your insight, and good to see you again, Barrett. So a couple of questions.
Okay.
There is what they call the National Electoral Watchdog in Sierra Leone. They brought out the report and they threatened that they will release the real reports and the real results of the elections, that based on their estimation, no party reached the 55% threshold. That no party reached the 55% threshold, and they put out a summary of how there was overvoting and ballot stuffing in areas like Calhoun and some other parts of Sierra Leone. That has also gone out on the radio to increase tensions as we speak now in Sierra Leone.
Yes.
Because when you see the eventual result, a lot of people say it's almost impossible that why did Madabio just reach 56%? Underline that. What's your take on that, sir? And I also want Ambassador Joe Keshi to talk about that. And also add this to the question that only 2 weeks ago, the opposition APC had called for the resignation and the removal of the electoral chief in Sierra Leone because they don't believe in him and they don't believe he's going to be transparent and truthful. What will you say about those two reports this morning as reported by the Sierra Leonean Telegraph?
Well, what I'll say about these allegations is that they could lead to a breakdown of law and order, and they should avoid that by all means. But at the same time, one should hope that there will be proper investigations to prove whether these allegations are true. And the president who has been sworn in quickly for his second term should not stand in the way of these allegations. What is important is that these allegations should be shown to be properly investigated. And that is all I think I would say up to this time.
Okay.
Any allegations of irregularities should be properly investigated.
Ambassador Keshi, would you like to say something about what the National Election Watchdog has said, that nobody got up to 55% in the election, and that they said they are going to release their own reports from what they have, you know. And in fact, that was also announced on radio. It was reported in a paper this morning called the Sierra Leonean Telegraph.
Yes, first, let me acknowledge and say hello to my friend Lindsay. It's nice to hear your voice still so strong and still interested in African affairs, you know, and following situation in a country I know you've visited, God knows how many times. Look, Ruben, you know, I heard exactly what you said this morning, this threat to release, the report. I think last night, equally, the civil society also made similar, allegations, about the conduct of the election. And I'll just simply repeat what I've said. When you look at where things go wrong, it's always at that counting stage where electoral officers, those who are supposed to be the custodian of a safe, secure, credible election, when they begin to misbehave, when they begin to to tamper with the figures. And when you look at the history of Sierra Leone, even the first election that was intended to end the civil war that President Kaba won, it was the same thing. I think it's very difficult for anybody in Sierra Leone today to just win 56 or 60% election because of the polarization of the two parties. These two parties are the strongest parties. They are the oldest parties in the country, and they have very credible, credentials and personnel. Politicians on both sides. So what we just have to hope is that reason will prevail, and that the people involved, the officials, because look, Sierra Leoneans are very passionate with their elections. You really need to see, you really need to be in Sierra Leone to watch the campaigns. You will enjoy it. You will love it. It's a carnival, and every party has almost equal support. So my appeal will actually go to President Bio to be reasonable about these things. There's no harm in saying, okay, all right, look, let's have a recount. And let's find out what, if we have to go for a rerun, fair enough. At least the last time he went for a rerun, he won. So there should be nothing after 5 years. If you have to go to another rerun, so be it. The most important thing, as Barrett said, is Sierra Leone to maintain peace and continue its recovery after 10 years of civil war.
Well, Ambassador Keshi and Mr. Barrett, let me put you a question. under President Bio's watch, inflation is at the highest level ever in 2 years. The national currency of Sierra Leone is one of the worst in the African continent. Sierra Leone has one of the highest unemployment rates in West Africa, which resulted in protests in 2022. Ambassador Keshi, you say you know President Bio very well. Yes, it's the choice of the people to choose whoever they want as their president. Do you think that he really has the capacity to lead Sierra Leone through that economic recovery, as someone that you know very well? And the same question for you, Mr. Barrett. You used to teach at Forabe College, Sierra Leone. So you know the country very well. What's your assessment of President Bio's leadership ability, without prejudice to the fact that, you know, he has been president and will remain president? Let me start with you, Mr. Barrett, and then we'll go back to Ambassador Keshi.
Well, one thing I want, as we are talking, let us not forget how Sierra Leone returned to the issue of representative government. President Bio instituted a palace coup as a young army officer and promised to return the government to the representative of the people, and succeeded in doing so in a very short time. That singular act of his young days as an army officer gave him the credibility that he used in coming back many years later, nearly a generation later, as a civilian leader. And I believe he definitely has shown a deep sincerity in his approach to representing the people as a civilian himself. So his ability as an economic manager may not be as great as we would like, but it was not himself under his rule that inflation started in Sierra Leone. He inherited a very devastating economic situation when he came in 2018, and he has apparently been trying. The problem in democratic society is that when you are trying to do your best, the opposition will be there trying to bring you down. And that is a part of the problem in Sierra Leone. The democratic culture in Sierra Leone is very passionate, as Joe Keshi has said. And it is true that the difficulties that the average Sierra Leonean are going through are very severe. But I believe President Bio has a good intention. And what I would like us to remember is that as he tries to correct the situation, he will also have to try to reconcile the people. I understand that in his acceptance speech yesterday, he said his focus will be on bringing the country together. That is the important thing. And if that means going for an investigation of what really happened in the election, it's a very important part of what he should do.
Well, Ambassador Keshi, President Bio's capacity.
You know, Bio was the deputy head of state to Captain Strasser. And the much I can say, when he was a deputy head of state, as young as he was, I think he was between, if I'm not wrong, I remember that the youngest coup plotter at that time was 23 years old, and the oldest was 27. Yeah. And so Captain Strasser was 27, and Khalifa, Karifa, the youngest, I think, was 23. And so Bio, if I remember, was probably within that same range. He showed some capacity. He showed some understanding and seriousness. And it was because they were not happy with the way things were going, particularly with respect to the war, that a section of the military led by Bio himself, decided that they needed a change, and they effected a coup, and he came to power, and he lasted just for 3 months. In that 3 months also, he did a couple of things that you could look back now with not actually with the benefit of hindsight, because we were witnesses to history. At that time, made some little gestures and, to see whether he could retain power. The people of Sierra Leone roundly rejected any attempt to extend military rule, which was why they had an election. So, but you see, Sierra Leone went through 10 years war that virtually destroyed every institution of state. And so it's going to take a long time for the country to rebuild. And that is exactly what the people of Sierra Leone should focus on. Whoever they elect must have that capacity. As you rightly said, pointed out, but you can't actually blame them, because some Sierra Leoneans blame even the last government. I think it was the APC government of NS Kuruma as well, for not doing enough to build up the economy. And so with the current global situation, which has affected every country to a large extent, you will need a great lot of imagination, to be able to pull your country out of the doldrum as Sierra Leone is today. Whether he has the capacity, yes. Whether he has the men and women around him who could help him do this, that's another question. But the most important thing is, if you go through, and I still believe that the starting point is have a free, fair, credible election, and the collective support of the people, you'll be able to go through some changes. And I think it's this inability, because of the polarization, that Sierra Leone continues to go through these serious economic crises. But for capacity, yes. But I don't have a full knowledge of everybody around him today. But yes, he has the capacity. He's been a former head of state, and he's been in this battle for as long as I can remember. So I just think that what they need to do is find capable hands. But first, you must resolve this electoral, crisis that has again, affected Sierra Leone.
All right, Ambassador Keshi, this question is for you both, and Mr. Barrett as well. With regards to the elections, spotlight is also on the Electoral Commission, and there's some similarities between the Sierra Leonean election, or perhaps to draw parallels between the Sierra Leonean election and what we had back home. So I'd like you to speak to strengthening institutions. The opposition party had said that they could not vouch the integrity of the process because some of the seals were broken on the boxes before the ballots was counted. How do we strengthen institutions like Electoral Commission so that we do not have accusations like this? Just doubting the process and also talking about the fact that some of them were compromised. This question is for you both, and lessons we can learn, not just for Sierra Leone, but other African countries.
I was at a seminar all day yesterday on foreign policy and transactional challenges facing the West African region. And one of the contributions that I made was the need to strengthen institutions, but at the same time, the need to have strong men. In the case of Africa, they need to have strong men leading those institutions. Strong men who can say no, not just to the president, but to all other gestures, if they can. Because part of the problem is the inability of those who lead a number of African institutions, particularly in this country, to resist, the pressure from government, from friends, from family, from political party leaders. So until we have such, and And the fact that we, the people, also must stand up and stop this. Look, let's not, as long as we allow politicians to continue to divide us and then to do whatever they want to do, we will continue to have weak institutions because nobody pays attention to the people who are appointed to these institutions in the first place. And secondly, immediately they are appointed, they do not even follow the mandate of the institution. They do not even care about the rules of the institution. All they care is to control, play up to the leadership of the country or to their masters. And this is where the problem is. So if you do not have the character, to be able to resist the pressure, or you say to them, come and take your job. I don't want it if you do not allow me to do my job.
Yes.
We will continue to have this problem. So it's going to be difficult to strengthen institutions when you have overwhelming powers of the president, National Assembly members, and the rest on you, and money being spread all over the place.
Ambassador Keshi, thank you very much. We are almost out of time. Mr. Barrett, your quick comments in hopefully less than a minute if you can. Thank you, sir.
Well, I would really love to see somewhere where election commissions are truly independent. And in order to do that, you probably have to get the regional body involved at the establishment of such commissions rather than the national body. And that's my own hope before God calls me that I'll see that happen. You get the regional body. That's why I said Sierra Leone must remember the sacrifice made by the region to bring democracy and allow it to work. And I hope President Bio will allow a proper investigation to take place. That's what I can say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay Barrett, and thank you to Ambassador Joe Keshi for joining us on the morning show today.